He's on it.
I'm gonna bring you to a place you never want to be. I'm gonna bring you to 7th layer hell.
Okay.
No, I'm bringing you to 7th layer hell. We'll say what's up to your dad while we're there.
Apparently, inactivity only matters when the UFC wants it to matter, because somehow two welterweights can both be inactive, but only one gets punished for it. One fighter stays protected in the rankings for almost 2 years, while the other gets removed despite being undefeated, injured, and coming off a win. Today, we need to talk about the hypocrisy surrounding Shavkat Rakhmonov and Colby Covington. Assalamu alaikum, my brothers. My name is Omar, and after the news of Shavkat's return and following the news of Colby Covington's recent retirement from the UFC a few weeks ago, I wanted to point out a major hypocrisy within the UFC's ranking system and their biased treatment of certain fighters that may benefit them in viewership and also monetary compensation. This has nothing to do with hating Colby Covington. This is about consistency. If the UFC says inactivity matters, then it should matter for all of the fighters, not just the big ones. Shavkat Rakhmonov and Colby Covington were both inactive in the same division, but only one was treated specially. Now let's get into the similarities between these two fighters. They were both in the same weight class. They were both welterweight fighters in the UFC, both inactive. They both had their own reasons for their inactivity, but they were both inactive for a long period of time. They were both top contenders, both ranked top 15, but they had completely different treatment. And once you actually look at the timeline side by side, you really can't defend this. Let's start with Colby Covington. After beating Jorge Masvidal in March of 2022, Colby Covington sat out for 21 months before getting a title shot against Leon Edwards. 21 months, almost 2 years without fighting. And during that time, he was ranked number 3 the entire way through. He wasn't removed from the rankings, he wasn't forced to fight contenders, and he wasn't punished for being inactive. Instead, he gets rewarded with a title shot. Colby's last fight against Joaquin Buckley was 17 months ago, and he still remained in the rankings until he retired just recently. So apparently you can disappear for 2 years, do media appearances, sit cage side, trash talk online, and the UFC still keeps your rankings warm. Colby had more campaign appearances than octagon appearances in 2024. Now let's talk about Shavkat Rakhmonov. Unlike Colby Covington, Shavkat was not inactive because of politics or just waiting around sitting in the rankings for a title shot. He was injured multiple times, and it was serious as well. And the crazy part is that he was still fighting through those injuries even before his long layoff just recently. In UFC 296, Shavkat fought against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and he was injured the whole fight. He suffered a torn ligament in his ankle 6 weeks before the fight, and he still took the fight. A lot of these fighters would have pulled out. This was a high-profile fight. This was a fight that led to him getting the Ian Gary matchup and eventually winning. A lot of fighters would say this is too risky, and he was undefeated as well. This would have been a major loss, but he did not pull out. He still fought, and he finished Wonderboy. Throughout the fight, he avoided throwing kicks. He was very conservative. He relied more on grappling. After his unanimous decision win over Ian Gary, it was reported that Shavkat Rakhmonov suffered a severe knee injury. So let's get this straight. This guy's undefeated, he keeps winning, and he fights injured, risking his body for the UFC. This is what they want. This is what Dana White wants. Someone that can fight anyone, fight anytime. But instead, after 13 to 14 months of inactivity due to his injury, let's not forget, he gets removed from the rankings. But Colby Covington can disappear and gets rewarded with a title shot? Coming off of a Masvidal win too, crazy. Now if we compare their records, their actual performances from 2020 to 2024, these differences are stark, and it becomes even crazier. People say that Shavkat Rakhmonov's inactive, but he was more inactive than Colby Covington ever was throughout that span from 2020 to 2024. If we look at Colby Covington's record from 2020 to 2024, throughout that 4-year span, he averaged 1.25 fights per year. throughout the 4 years, he went 2-3. He won twice, lost 3 times. There were mostly decisions, and there were long stretches of inactivity as well. I mean, if we look at it, September 2020 to November 6, 2021. That's more than a year of inactivity. November 6, 2021 to March 5th, 2022. This one, less inactivity. And then this, the 21, almost 2 years of inactivity here from March 5th to December 16th. And he loses to Leon Edwards. And then another year of inactivity from 16th to 14th, almost a year of inactivity. And he loses via TKO doctor stoppage to Joaquin Buckley. Unbelievable. And comparing that to Shavkat Rakhmonov debuting in 2020 and fighting all the way to December 7th, 2024, he averaged about 1.75 fights per year. He was undefeated that whole time. Almost every fight was a finish, 100% finish rate before the Ian Gary fight. This guy was unstoppable. October 24th, 2020, fought Alex Oliveira. Then June 26, 2021, fought Michel Prazeres. That's within a year. And then June 26th to February 5th, also within a year. He fought later 2022, June 25th, 2022. He fought Neil Magny, got that submission. And then he fights Jeff Neal within a year, March 4th, 2023. And then that same year, he fights Stephen Thompson. And that's the fight where he fought injured and still got a submission win over Stephen Thompson. He had that year gap. And then he fights Ian Gary. And he wins, unanimous decision. Now he's injured, but still, we only saw 1 year-long gap from Shavkat Rakhmonov, and it was when he was injured. He made up for inactivity by giving us the most dominant performances in the welterweight division. When Shavkat Rakhmonov fought, people were excited. You look forward to a Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. You don't expect a decision. He wasn't a decision merchant. You expect a finish. The only finishes that Colby got or when he was getting finished. To be fair, he did get a finish over Tyron Woodley. When we look at UFC 296, which was a card that both Shavkat and Colby Covington fought in, we can see like the stark differences between their performances. At UFC 296, Shavkat made history, becoming the first to ever submit Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And on the other hand, Colby Covington barely took a round off of Leon Edwards. He lost throughout the whole fight. This was the worst we've ever seen Colby Covington since he got knocked out by Kamaru Usman. I'm well aware that Colby Covington in his prime, he was dangerous, he was a monster, he was up and coming. The UFC is supposed to reward merit and activity. Why is the more active and undefeated contender being treated poorly while Colby Covington, a washed has-been, is treated with such high regard among the rankings? He should have been dropped from the rankings a long time ago. This is the hypocrisy of the UFC. Another comparison. Who these guys were fighting. Shavkat was taking on riskier fights. Stephen Thompson, he was out of his prime, but he's still a crafty vet. He was coming off of that Kevin Holland win. Jeff Neal and Neil Magny, both gatekeepers of the welterweight division. Ian Machado Gary, one of the most hyped and anticipated prospects. He was undefeated when he fought Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he's going to be facing off against Islam Makhachev soon. These guys were dangerous, and he was taking these risks, and he still came out on top. And when we look at Colby Covington's 2020 to 2024 fights, who did he fight? Tyron Woodley. He was coming off of a losing streak. The Usman and Burns losses. Jorge Masvidal. He was coming off of losses against Usman. Colby Covington was getting Usman sloppy seconds. Who did he lose to? Kamaru Usman. What happened after that? Kamaru Usman got kicked in the head by Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, what happened to him? He lost in his next fight to Bilal Muhammad. Even Joaquin Buckley. What happened to Joaquin Buckley right after? He lost to Kamaru Usman. I mean, this guy is losing to people that lose their very next fight. What does that say about Colby Covington? I think it says that he doesn't have what it takes to beat these certain high-level fighters that Shavkat Rakhmonov would be beating. I mean, free title shots. Let's talk about it. UFC 296. When he got that title shot against Leon Edwards. There were so many better people that could have gotten it. Mainly Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat Rakhmonov, he was undefeated. He was coming off of that Jeff Neal win. But on the other hand, when we look at Bilal Muhammad, this guy was just coming off of a win against Gilbert Burns. And, they did give him the title shot after. They did. I'll grant them that. But, I mean, why not give it to him at UFC 296? Why give it to Colby Covington? His fight was not even the best fight on the card. And most of Colby Covington's fights aren't the best fights on the card. This just sounds like the UFC has different standards, depending on who the fighter is. A sort of privilege.
You got handed to you. You got Dana White privilege.
Speaking of Dana White privilege, the biggest star in the UFC, we all know him. He's back. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor didn't even get this kind of treatment. Let's look back when Conor McGregor suffered one of the nastiest injuries that we've ever seen in the octagon. During his trilogy against Dustin Poirier, when he snapped his leg in half. He was the UFC's biggest superstar. And guess what? They waited 17 months, and when he didn't recover, they removed him from the rankings. He was their biggest star. Think about it. Colby Covington isn't even their second biggest star. The UFC is willing to remove Conor for being injured, but they kept Colby in the rankings for way longer. 21 months versus 17. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this situation exposes what, a lot of MMA fans have believed for years. That the UFC rankings, they're not based on merit or activity. There's a clear bias involved in the promotion of these certain UFC fighters such as Colby Covington. Because when you compare Shavkat and Colby side by side, these inconsistencies are impossible to ignore. One fighter was active. He fought through injuries. He remained undefeated. He finished everyone he fought except for one individual. But he still got removed from the rankings after 13 months. The other fighter barely fought 1 year on average. He went through huge layoffs without fighting at all. And he still received title shots with this minimal activity and was protected in the rankings, stayed in the rankings, kept his spot in the rankings the entire time. And once again, we're not talking about prime Colby Covington. Prime Colby Covington, he was good. He had his place. Fighters should not be able to coast on these past achievements to stay relevant in the rankings. I believe that a UFC fighter is only as good as their last fight. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think the UFC was justified in removing Shavkat Rakhmonov from the rankings? Do you think that Colby Covington should have been removed from the rankings or not? And yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. Bye.